Hello everyone, and welcome back to another edition of Indie Book Review, where today I am reviewing The Difference Engine by William Gibson and Bruce Sterling. Now, some of you might be thinking, what's with the hat? Well, I'm reviewing a steampunk novel, so what better way to celebrate this than with a steampunk style, at least with the hat anyway. So I initially bought The Difference Engine way back. I think it was like 2017 when I initially bought it, because I was just writing The Engine That Runs the World at the time, and I wanted to get a little bit more knowledgeable in the steampunk genre, and I think I tried on 3 different occasions to try and read this book. And I don't know if it's William Gibson's style, but I just find it really hard for me to read it. So I got it on Audible, and I listened to it. And I'm not going to lie, I was bored for most of the book. I was really, really bored for most of this book. Like, it is so dry in so many places. Now, that said, that's not saying like there's nothing of interest in this book at all, because that is very much not the case. There is a lot of actual really interesting scenes in this book, especially when it comes to Mallory and the cult that's kind of following him around. I'm not even entirely sure if cult is the right word to use in this instance, but it's kind of the best word that I got for it. Anyway, what's this book about? Well, it kind of has 3 different point of views. The first one is Sybil Gerard, who is the daughter of a Luddite dog. She's the daughter of a Luddite, and that's kind of her story. She gets in with this guy, Dan. Some shit goes on. She still ends up in France, but not in the way that she thought. The second one is Mallory. Don't remember his first name, because mostly he just gets referred to as Mallory throughout the book, which is his last name. But anyway, he's a paleontologist. He's discovered the Brontosaurus, which is a really cool discovery, a really cool find. And he gets these punch cards for a computer, and these people want them from him. They're basically like a communist cult. They want these cards, and he's not going to give them to him. And they're just... his story is pretty much the bulk of the book. His is the majority of the book. And then after that, it's Lawrence Oliphant. And stuff happening. It's more or less... like, his bit is just more or less an explanation as to what goes on after the whole ordeal with Mallory, and picking up where Sybil left off, essentially. And not gonna lie, his section is pretty dull, and I ended up kind of just zoning out for the majority of it, because, well, I still managed to, pay attention to what was going on. I just found that it really didn't lead to much. So, okay, the story is kind of lackluster. But what about the steampunk? Is there much in the way of steampunk? I mean, this is considered to be one of the major cornerstones of the steampunk genre. So surely there's got to be a lot of steampunk in it, and a lot of steampunk technology, and a lot of steampunk themes and messages. Kinda. Yes and no, and yes and no. Like, it's a very Victorian England. Like, very, very England 1800s, Industrial Revolution. There is some steam-powered machinery. Like, there is a steam-powered vehicle. And there's some steam-powered stuff here and there. Like, for the most part, it is fairly science fiction-y, but you don't really feel the science fiction in it. You don't really feel the steampunk. It's just kind of Victorian England with a couple things that, like, with a few less carriages and a few less other things here and there. The world is very different in this. Like, the United States is not united. The Americas are very, very divided. Like, there's the communist New York, there's Texas, which is its own country. There's a bunch of other little different states that are countries. Like, the Irish potato famine didn't really happen, so there's that. Like, there's a lot of little things here and there. There is the difference engine, which is basically a computer but you don't really get to see much of that. Like, there's just a lot of little things that, I don't know, maybe it didn't come through in the Audible version that might have been in the book. But like I said, I tried on 3 different occasions to try and get through the book, like try and read the book, and I just couldn't even really get past Sybil's part. And hers is not a very large part of the book. So I can't imagine how hard it would have been to get through Mallory's bulk of the story. But you want to know where this book really shines? In the research. Like, oh my god. I felt like I was in Victorian England while I read this book. I felt like I was in that era. Because the characters talked in that particular way. Everything was done in a particular manner. Like, it was just done very, very, very well. Like, even in terms, like, there are historical figures throughout this book that I'm almost willing to call this book a historical science fiction novel. Which I know is almost antithetical to the historical fiction genre. Because historical fiction is basically fiction that takes place in a historical era with a couple of historical figures and tends to stay fairly close to what history is. But with these historical figures in this science fiction area, I'd almost call this a historical science fiction novel. And while absolutely fascinating, and props to the amount of research that went into this book, to not just make this book read like it's from the 1800s, but to have it feel like it's from the 1800s, is astounding and absolutely noteworthy. So, all in all, I'm going to have to give this book a 6 out of 10. I personally did not enjoy this book as much as many, many others have. But that doesn't mean that the book is bad. It doesn't mean that there's nothing to be taken from this book. I personally just could not get into it. And I can see how it's a cornerstone in the science fiction or in the steampunk subgenre, but I do feel like more has been done with steampunk than this book has ever done with it. This was a great starting point, but the steampunk genre really grew and became more than what it ever would have been with this book in and of itself. And I love that. But I do have to give a lot of respect to this book for what it is as well. So, 6 out of 10 is about as fair as I can possibly be with this. It pretty much built up the genre that I absolutely love the most. Like, I absolutely adore steampunk. And, yeah. So, that's about all I got for you guys, so have a great day.